Welcome to the module on assessing student work. Here, we will provide tips and tools for assessing and providing feedback on students' critical and creative thinking. The purpose of assessment is twofold. First, it provides you with information about whether your instruction was successful in facilitating students reaching the learning goals you set forth in the course overall. If you see the desired gains, keep doing what you're doing. If you're not seeing the desired gains, use the information to make changes to your instruction. Second, it provides you with the information about where students are excelling and where they need additional support so that you can provide feedback. Constructive feedback must be specific enough so that the learner knows how to improve. For example, a general comment asking for more detail is less helpful than something more specific like, "Can you examine the idea from additional perspectives?" or "Can you elaborate on the benefits and drawbacks of each idea?" In order to benefit from assessment on both counts, learning outcomes must be closely and explicitly aligned with instruction and with assessment. Aligning these three factors allow for a feedback loop where you can continually improve your course and students can continually improve their skills. How to assess critical and creative thinking skills is not always straightforward, and many faculty have little or no formal training in either assessment of student learning outcomes in general or assessment of a range of specific critical and creative thinking skills. Some common barriers are lacking tools and specific criteria by which to assess critical and creative thinking skills, lacking precise language to provide feedback to students, and it is sometimes not feasible to provide individual feedback in the context of the course, for example, very large enrollment courses. The barrier of time is often an issue. It may not be feasible to provide individual feedback on every occasion that feedback would be valuable. This is likely to be true in very large enrollment courses, but also in classes of any size if there are frequent activities and assignments. In these cases, direct assessment and feedback of student thinking can still be achieved. Sampling student responses or outputs and discussing trends and further considerations to explore with the class as a whole is an effective way to provide feedback. Sampling can be done by a variety of methods, formally and informally. Formally, an instructor could collect low-stakes assignments on a pass-fail basis and read through enough responses to understand where students tend to be having successes and challenges. The instructor could then discuss these with the class as a whole. Informal methods of sampling could be based on in-class discussions and listening in on groups, or having groups share out their responses and then guiding the conversation toward the gaps. Instructors who do this frequently often are adept at knowing in advance where students will be most likely to struggle. For example, here's a common kind of discussion that occurs after students do the wallet activity that you're familiar with. Teacher: I noticed that most of you designed a physical wallet and only one student that I observed designed a digital wallet. Why do you think that is? Student: Because you had a pile of arts and craft supplies at the front of the room, so I assumed we had to make a physical wallet. Teacher: Did I tell you that you had to use the supplies? Student: No. Teacher: So some of you made an assumption about how the problem must be solved based on the familiar tools in front of you. Students: Light bulb. Some faculty opt to use peer evaluation as a form of feedback. I would suggest proceeding with caution if the goal is to assess critical and creative thinking skills. Peer evaluation is usually of primary value to the evaluator, and the value to the recipient varies. It's risky to use peer evaluation as the only source of feedback in this area. Many rubrics are able to assess critical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, etc. One valuable resource is the AACNU value rubrics. The intellectual standards can be integrated into an assignment rubric, and/or the language can be used in providing feedback to students. For example, how is this information relevant to your argument? Have you accurately represented the conclusions, and are they supported by the relevant evidence? Have you appropriately connected the problem to the conclusion? Have you considered the depth and complexities of the issue? Have you adapted your thinking and conclusions based on evidence gathered along the way? Adopting from the AACNU rubrics, literature on creative thinking, and with input from faculty across campus, the NC State Think program created a rubric that can be useful for both establishing specific critical and creative thinking criteria and providing specific language. This is the rubric created at NC State, broken into 2 pages for visibility. Note that the main headings align with the steps in the critical and creative thinking process. There are different ways to use this rubric. First, not every assignment utilizes every skill, and many assignments have goals in addition to these. I often integrate just the relevant skills into my assignment rubrics. I personally find that the full rubric is complicated for students to digest. In rubrics that I provide to students, I often include only the skill and then the description of the capstone level, and then leave open space to write feedback if I'm providing written feedback. We've provided a text version of this document for you to download and modify. I am going to walk you through the skills and the capstone briefly. Under raising questions and formulating problems, the first skill is articulating the issue and its scope. Capstone, issue or problem to be considered critically is stated clearly and described comprehensively, delivering all relevant information necessary for full understanding. There are 3 skills under gathering and assessing relevant information. The first, selecting and analyzing information. Capstone. Information is taken from sources with enough interpretation or evaluation to develop a comprehensive analysis or synthesis. In addition, expert viewpoints are questioned thoroughly. Recognizing assumptions. Capstone. Thoroughly analyzes one's own and others' assumptions and carefully evaluates the relevance of context when presenting a position. Considering perspectives. Capstone. Integrates alternate, divergent, or contradictory perspectives or ideas fully. Not all student work products will show the evidence of their thinking process, so a reflection of work with specific prompts can give insight into how students made decisions and may also build the habit of mind to make considered decisions. I often provide reflective questions that students respond to alongside the assignment. Some examples of reflective prompts are as follow. For articulating the issue and scope, what is the problem you're trying to address, who is the intended audience, and what was the desired outcome? For selecting and analyzing information, provide an annotated bibliography that indicates why you used each reference and whether they had bias, etc. For recognizing assumptions, over the course of this project or semester, was there a time when you realized you made an incorrect or inappropriate assumption? Continuing with the rubric, we are evaluating generating, judging, and synthesizing ideas. So for the skill of generating alternatives, the capstone is generates multiple divergent ideas that draw on a wide range of perspectives. For judging appropriateness, capstone weighs the value of relevant benefits and drawbacks of ideas, selects, recommends appropriate ideas with a sound argument, and originality of thought, capstone, creates or extends novel ideas, questions, formats, or products to create new knowledge or knowledge that cuts across boundaries. And some examples of reflective prompts are for generating alternatives, what other ideas did you rule out and why? And for judging appropriateness, what factors did you consider in deciding the format of the work or the question to focus on? We've included a worksheet you can use as you consider whether you'll be able to evaluate skills in the work product or if an accompanying reflection would be helpful in doing so. We can also direct you to tailored reflections of work for a variety of different kinds of assignments. So to recap, consider the mechanism by which you'll provide feedback for each assignment or activity. This should be something that is sustainable for you to maintain in the context of your course. Will you provide individual feedback, or will you ask a few students to share out in class and then ask some probing questions? You will provide a plan for feedback for each assignment or activity you include in your portfolio. You will describe the format that you will use and any tools that you'll use, for example, a rubric if that's relevant. The feedback format can be as simple as guided class discussion or as detailed as individual written formal evaluation. For assignments, determine in advance which skills you'll assess using the work itself and which you may need to assess from student reflections. The reflections can either stand on their own or could be woven in as part of the assignment. We look forward to seeing what you create.